19th, 2016. I'd like to welcome everyone to the regular City Council meeting for the Fitchburg City Council. Councilor Bean, would you please lead us in the salute to the flag? To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please conduct the roll call?
President Kushmera.
Present.
Councilor Bean. Councilor Boschman. Present. Councilor Beazall. Councilor Clark. Here. Councilor Di Natale. Councilor Donnelly. Councilor Green. Here. Councilor Joseph. Here. Councilor Caddy. Councilor Tran. Here.
Public forum. Anyone wishing to speak on any matter on the agenda may do so for not more than 2 minutes. If you are addressing a public hearing petition, you'll have an opportunity to speak at that time. Please approach the center table and identify yourself by name and address for the record and the item on the agenda for which you are speaking to. Does anyone wish to speak at this time? Hearing none. If there are no objections, we'll now move to an oral report from the Appointments Committee. Councilor Clark.
Yes, Mr. President. Did you have to recuse yourself in this?
You can read the report and we'll take action at that time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President. All these are unanimous appointees, and they're all new appointments. Airport Commission, Mr. John Early, 89 Sunrise Avenue in Fitchburg, to fill the place of the term of Mr. Kit Walker, set to expire February 1st, 2017. Trustee of Burial Grounds, Mr. Andrew Hawthorne, 26 Elmont Terrace, Fitchburg, for the term to expire January 1st, 2019. Water Wastewater Commission, Ms. Nina Nazarenian, 48 Swan Avenue, Fitchburg, for a term to expire January 1st, 2020. Mr. Joshua Champagny, 20 Mill Street, Unit 11, Fitchburg, for a term to expire January 1st, 2020. Special police officers for the City of Fitchburg, retired Lieutenant Glenn C. Fossa, also retired Detective Perry Pappas. And finally, the Tax Increment Financing Board, Mr. Jay Bry, Vice President of Finance and Administration at Fitchburg State University, and Mr. Bruce Tightman, 795 Fisher Road, and that's in Fitchburg.
Motion to accept the Appointments Committee report, excluding the Airport Commission appointment.
I have a motion and second to accept the Appointments Committee report, excluding the Airport Commissioner appointment. Speaking to the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous.
Motion to accept the Airport Commission appointment.
Councilors, I have as a member of the Airport Commission, I'll just recuse myself for to avoid any conflict of interest. Councilor Green, I'd ask for you to assume that responsibility.
So I have a motion and second on the appointment of Mr. John Early to the Airport Commission.
Move the committee's recommendation be approved.
All have been heard. Make a motion to accept John Early. So what do we do? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we accept the appointment.
Thank you, Councilor Green. Report from the Committee on Records. Councilor Donnelly.
We've reviewed the minutes and they appear to be in order. Second.
I have multiple motions and multiple seconds to accept the report from the Committee on Records. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Communications from His Honor the Mayor. We have 3 communications. Letter of reappointment for Mr. David Roth to the Human Rights Commission. Letter of appointment of Ms. Rosa M. D'Souza to the Board of Library Trustees. And a letter of promotions with the Fitchburg Fire Department in the following order. Lieutenant Chad M. Coutremanche to Permanent Fire Captain, and the following firefighters to the rank of Permanent Fire Lieutenants: Edward F. Suarez, Richard M. Jollimore, Donald A. Fenwick, Andrew K. Roy, Patrick J. Roy, Gregory J. Moran.
Two appointments, referred to the Appointments Committee, and the letter of promotion be filed in the city clerk's office. Is that correct?
I have a motion and second to accept the communications and to file the letter of promotions with the city clerk's office. Councilor Di Natale?
Speaking on that, isn't the chief supposed to make a presentation on this?
Yes. I would invite Chief Roy forward at this
Are
time.
we not supposed
Thank
to
you.
approve the appointments?
What's that?
Aren't we supposed to approve the promotions? Or is this a formality?
This is simply a formality, Councilor Di Natale, but
So we're not taking a vote on that?
that's correct.
I do have a question.
Absolutely. I'd
for the
invite Chief Roy forward at this time. Chief Roy, good evening.
Thank you, Councilors. Just briefly, first of all, I'd like to thank the council as always. As you can see by the crowd here tonight, it's always impressive for our people, and they look forward to being sworn in front of the city council and the mayor and the people at home. A lot of family and friends here tonight. I just would like to recognize a few people. These 7 positions, they're taking the spot of a number of very dedicated firefighters that have retired in the last couple of years, and I'd just like to mention them. Deputy Chiefs John Curran, Kevin Curran, Brian Beliveau, Dave Russo, and Lieutenant Sally Tater, Lieutenant Ken DeJean, and Lieutenant Steve Castelli. So those guys all put dedicated years of service, and I'd just like to thank them for their service.
Thank you, Chief. Councilor Di Natale?
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, when I saw the appointment letter, I saw on the annual report that you gave us that there were 10 lieutenants. One's being promoted to captain. And these 6 are coming on, so there's going to be 15 now?
No, I'll explain that, Council. There was promotional lieutenants that they've moved back to private.
Okay, so who are the positions that retired again? There were 3 deputy chiefs?
It was 4 deputy chiefs.
4 deputy
And
chiefs.
3 lieutenants.
3 lieutenants.
Correct. And different people moved up as the civil service exams took place and were certified. We moved people up. We moved up a deputy chief a couple of weeks ago, but we were waiting on the captains and lieutenants list. Those lists became available in March, and that's what we're promoting off of tonight. We haven't changed any numbers of the
Okay, so
officers.
there's no number changes in headcount. And
Correct.
what about the overall cost? I'm assuming it's neutral at least, because 4 deputy chiefs, I'm assuming, are more to the city than financially than...
Well, we filled 4 of the jobs, Counselor. As you remember, a few years ago, we eliminated 2 deputy chiefs positions. We went from 6 to 4, and we eliminated 4 lieutenants positions. We went from 16 to 12. And so we're maintaining the same level that we've had of right along. The new people coming in also come in at a lower grade that have already filled these lieutenant ranks.
Is this at least cost neutral?
At least it's cost savings when you replace these lieutenants at the bottom end.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure, because
Absolutely.
I just wanted to say on top of that, with me, it's always about the money, but I do know a few of these gentlemen. I've grown up with them, and it is so I don't know if surreal is the right word, but I remember these guys used my parents' house as a base of operations as early as the age of 5 or 6. Lieutenant Roy and Lieutenant Roy, they were separate companies out of the garage, to the mayor's
Dismay.
dismay at times, so I am one of those people. I tell people I have the most firefighting experience without being a firefighter just by these guys playing
do,
in my
Counselor.
yard
I agree.
for 10 years. So it's only fitting that they are where they are. And for the rest of the gentlemen, thank you for their continued service to the city. And I am pleased to welcome them to those ranks. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Just as follow-up on what the Council said, we did have some senior firefighters that fill these jobs in the interim. Greg May, Mark Bowers, Scott MacArthur, Marty Kukla, and Rick Jollymore that fill them. They now have returned to their firefighting duties, and these new lieutenants will take over. Just a few things about for the councils that don't know. A lot goes into studying for these exams. Many hours, usually 8-10 months beforehand. They begin studying. Sometimes it's great sacrifice to their wives and kids, and they miss different events to do the studying. There's actually 10 publications that they have to study, books and publications, and they're all related to the job. Fire service, company officer, fire inspection and code enforcement, hazardous materials, National Incident Command System, Massachusetts General Laws 148, pumping and aerial apparatus operation, building construction, engine company operations, structural firefighting, collapse of burning buildings, strategic and tactical considerations on the fire ground, and supervision in today's fire service. So obviously, there's a lot goes into it. I appreciate the work they've did. In the captain's rank, we had 4 lieutenants sign up for that. Obviously, Chad became the top candidate and will be appointed captain tonight. And in the lieutenants, there was 16 firefighters that took the exam. 7 of them passed. I'd like to call these gentlemen up so the city clerk can swear them in, which we appreciate Anna doing that.
Chief, we'll do that in one moment.
Yep.
Once we take this vote.
Yep.
If we could. In the meantime, I have Councilor Green.
I, too, would just like to reiterate that it does make me feel a little aged when I look at the Roy boys and, you know, where they are now in life, considering that I watched them grow up across the street from me. So, and again, I appreciate the time and effort and compassion that went into the Walton Street fire specifically. From the Roys. So with that, I'm honored that you've continued in your father's footsteps and in your uncle's footsteps. So I appreciate all the work that you do. Thank you.
Chief, you have an incredible force that's standing behind you. It's great to see so many in the crowd here tonight. It's some of the best things we get to do as a council. Is swear these gentlemen in and let them to continue to see them rise the ranks and keep our city safe. So there's no one else I'd rather see to these appointments of captain and lieutenant, and look forward to seeing them come before us. No doubt many of them will come before us again sometime in the future. So congrats to you and really bringing them forward and teaching them leadership and to that infrastructure you've put in place to allow them to continue rising up the ranks. So much credit is owed to you and to your entire force. And I just have to say it's great to see so many of them who not only execute their job so seamlessly, but they're out there in the community day in and day out, filling holes wherever we need it. From natural disasters to community service. So I think we should commend all of them for all of their efforts on and off the job.
Thank you, Councilman. If I could call up the appointees. First is Captain Chad Kudamash. Chad's been with us since 2005, and he's also a U.S. Navy veteran. Next on the lieutenant's ranks is, and a lot of these people, I'm sure many of the councilors know, they've done a lot of work in the community, as the councils have said. Firefighter Rick Jollymore will be appointed to lieutenant. Rick's been with us since 1988. Lieutenant Eddie Suarez has been with us since 1997. He's also president of the Firefighters Union. Lieutenant Greg Moran, also been with us since 1997. Firefighter P.J. Roy, he's been with us since 2006. Firefighter Andy Roy has been on the job since 2010. And Firefighter Donnie Fenwick, also a Navy veteran who's been on the job since 2011. So, councilors, thank you very much.
Would you all please raise your right hands and repeat after me? Take an oath. I do solemnly promise and swear that I will faithfully and impartially and to the best of my knowledge and ability perform and discharge all the duties incumbent upon me, Mr. Kudamash, as fire captain. And the rest of you gentlemen as permanent lieutenants. For the city of Fitchburg. So help me God.
Mr. Kudamash,
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Well deserved. Congratulations. Well deserved. Congratulations. Congratulations. I think Councilor DiNatale is hoping you'll cease operations for the.
Look this way.
Can you ask him over here, Megan? One at a time. One at a time.
I've never been in the job.
I'm taking them. You're being taken out.
See it. It's always nice. It's the best thing ever. All these guys.
Dean was on what, more years and more. Not many people get that opportunity to be. I could talk. I had none of those good things. That was and I continued that. I don't know everybody now. I'm just getting an insight as to how the city works.
The thing is, though, they know you, right?
Hey, Mayor,
Were you going to say something before we leave?
Well, yeah, I was going to say. When we get back in, yeah. I didn't even know. You put a phone in?
I'll give him a phone. I want to do that.
Just talk. When in Rome. When in Rome. Yikes. Hit that button. Right there. Push it.
Always think that it's on.
I'm all set.
All right.
Change your mind. We'll bring it back into the next one. Thank you.
Go put the hammer down. Let's
Yeah.
We lose 9. We were all set. They were young, man. They were young.
So you actually leave Sunday night. You don't stay that night.
There was one on the second period, weird deflection that kind of went off coming down.
Sight.
I mean, that put us down 4-3. And I come back at 6 minutes to go, and we both had chances. Good night. We had guys. That's what I said that.
Once in a while. All right, where are we?
We have a motion and second on the floor to accept the communications.
Yeah.
Well, they better accept it.
I know.
That's right.
Let me say something. I was going to say something.
Yeah. Councilors, we're gonna return back to the agenda. As it stands on the floor, we have a motion and second to accept the communications. So at this point, I certainly hope we do. But before we take a vote, the mayor just wanted to offer a couple of comments.
Kind of lost the audience. Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time that's it feels like the State House. I just want to congratulate the individuals. Certainly the Roy family has a much storied history in the city of Fitchburg when it comes to firefighting. My thoughts and my remembrances of the Roy boys on Walton Street were a little bit different. I can compare it to when I was in the Navy and we would go into general quarters. Whenever we'd see them coming up the road, it would be, shutting the garage doors, closing the blinds, pretending as though we weren't home. But we wish them the best, and you couldn't get a better family. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking to the motion, Councilor Boschman.
On the motion there, going back to Mr. Early, on the Airport Commission, if we could give something to Mr. Walker for being such a good commissioner for 15 years plus, a recognition for his service. I was wondering if the mayor could do that for Mr. Walker, Kit Walker. He was on the commission for 15 years plus.
I know.
Councilor, absolutely. I'll be happy to work with the mayor and the Airport Commission to make sure we at the appropriate opportunity, recognize Mr. Walker for his years of service to the city.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. You're welcome. Mayor, rather.
Councilor, I have a motion and second on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Moving back to the agenda, City Property Committee, oral report, Councilor Joseph.
City Property Committee met this evening at 6:30. We had several items on the agenda. The following recommendations were made on petition 4013. Councilor Jody Joseph and Nick Carboni and the Elm Street Neighborhood Association to institute a property registration ordinance. That was voted 4-0 to give leave to withdraw. 21515, James C. Pappas, manager, Alex Development, LLC, to accept Turkey Hill Road and accept Goodfellow Drive as public ways, was passed 4-0. 23815, Lenny Laxo and Calvin Brooks, to direct the city solicitor to submit a order transferring ownership of a parcel of land at 3 Fairmont Place from tax possession to the control of the Parks Department, was passed 4-0. 24615, order city-owned property located at 3 Fairmont Place to transfer to the City Parks Department as outlined in that enclosed order, was passed 4-0. 4716, Calvin D. Brooks, City Treasurer, to declare the following properties as excess and refer them to the Chief Procurement Officer for advertising for sale: 21 Goddard Street, 43 East Street, and 16 Market Street. That petition was passed 5-0. 6816, Calvin D. Brooks, City Treasurer, to declare as excess property and refer to the Chief Procurement Officer for advertising the sale of 21 Oxford Street as outlined in the enclosed petition. That was passed 5-0. 6916, Calvin D. Brooks, City Treasurer, to amend the City Code, Chapter 14, Article 1, Sale of City-Owned Property, Section 1-2, Procedure, as outlined in the enclosed petition, was passed 5-0. 7016 was held in committee, and we adjourned at 7 p.m.
Will the committee's report be accepted?
Second.
I have a motion and second to accept the City Property Committee reports. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Chief, I apologize. I was neglectful in the palm circumstance of the fire department. I very neglectfully forgot about the fire department. You have the 07216 annual report, Fitchburg Police Department for the year 2015.
It was a hard act to follow, but I'll try to do my best. First of all, good evening, councilors. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. It's a pleasure to be presenting this evening to you the 2015 annual report of the Fitchburg Police Department. First and foremost, I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to the entire City Council and the Mayor's office for your continued support for the Fitchburg Police Department. It's evident everywhere I go that we have full support of this council and the Mayor's office, and that goes a long way amongst the rank and file of the Fitchburg Police Department. So on behalf of the entire department, thank you. When I assumed this position last year, I can't believe it's already been a year, one of my top priorities was to restore, at least to attempt to restore, the staffing levels of the Fitchburg Police Department. I'm proud to report that we're moving closer in that direction. This past year, we were able to fill 7 retirements with new police officers. In addition, we did something. We created the first civil service reserve program in the last 40 years. We saw the benefits of the reserve program just last month, where we put 3 guys into the police academy with ease like that, where it would have typically took 4 to 6 months. We were able to complete it in almost a month. So there's been a lot of things happening at the police department this past year. Things are the command staff. Out of the 16 command staff that I have, 7 of them are all new commanders. So there's a lot of new management within the police department. The whole department is really transformed into something I'm extremely proud of. With this report, each of you received a PDF version of this report. This report is loaded with statistical data that we report to the FBI yearly on crime trends within the city of Fitchburg. While I'd like to say that everything is rosy in the city of Fitchburg, I'd like to point out some successes that we've had this past year. Property crimes have decreased by almost 10%. That's a significant decrease in property crimes, and I attribute that to the hard work of the guys on the street being present in different spots. An area of concern of mine is the increase in violent crime in the city. There was a 3% increase in violent crime this year, which might not sound a lot, but 3% this year, compounded last year was 9%, and as you read, it's progressively gotten worse over the last 5 years. As we sat down trying to analyze the data to try to put some rhyme to reason to this increase in violent trend over the last 5 years, it was a consistent theme at our command staff meetings where we meet with all our commanders that the opiate epidemic has had a major impact on our violent crime. And it's not just being seen here. I also review crime statistics from other cities similar to our size, similar to our demographics. They're all seeing the same trend, and everybody's trending back saying the opiate epidemic that we're experiencing is having some type of effect on that. That being said, I'd like to report to the council that we're proactively addressing this epidemic. We've taken measures this past year with nasal Narcan. And I look at the epidemic as a multi-pronged approach. We've done conditional educational seminars this year with schools. I think we have to battle this on different fronts. We've taken our drug suppression unit. There's a lot of talk out there. You can't arrest your way out of this epidemic. However, it's fair to say, if you read this report, the work that was done by our drug suppressionist unit was second to none. They're taking out high-level drug dealers that are trying to bring their stuff into our city's limits, and they did an exceptional job this year. Another area that you're going to read in this report that was alarming to me was the calls for service. Calls for service in the city of Fitchburg rose last year. The Fitchburg Police Department recorded an astonishing number of 53,430 calls for service. I've been a police officer in the city for 30 years. I remember in 1987 and 86, if we had a busy year, it was 25,000 calls. We've almost doubled that. Now, a lot of that is due with the advent of 911 and the accessibility of cell phones. But if you look at 53,400 calls for service, that's an average of 151 calls for service each and every day. If you continue to do the math with 75 sworn police officers, that's a lot of calls per day. Our guys are going call to call to call, and the work they're performing on a daily basis is second to none. With that, I'd like to thank publicly each and every member of the Fitchburg Police Department, including our civilian staff. Their dedication to duty and making Fitchburg a safer place to live and work is second to none. One thing I'd like to say this evening for those folks that are watching at home, this is the first time I'm trying to create a transparency within the police department. I'm taking this annual report and I'm going to upload it onto our webpage. So this entire report will be able to be viewed through our webpage, and the public can see exactly what's happening here in the city of Fitchburg. Additionally, I apologize. I would have liked to brought colored copies for each counselor tonight, because I think if you read this with the work that my crime analyst did, it's second to none. And there's so much information here. It talks about crash statistics, some of your greatest impacts, intersections with the city. There's a wealth of knowledge in here just for you to understand what's happening within the city. Once again, I'd be willing to answer any questions at this time from any city councilor. My door's always open. You can come in any time. I would explain any part of this annual report. But I'd like to reiterate, I'm extremely proud of the work that the men and women of the Fitchburg Police Department do on a daily basis to respond to that many calls per year and provide the services is second to none. So with that, if there's any questions from the councilors.
Councilor Joseph.
No question, just an echo of our thanks to you for the last year, for the job that you've done and the job that your folks have done. I mean, like you said, second to none. They're out there every day on the front lines. we know it's not easy. We hope to continue to support you with more and more officers and more people on the ground, but for what you're doing with what you have, it's admirable, and thank you for taking this position and helping us.
Thank you.
Councilor Green.
I would just ask that you reiterate to the public that if there is issues or concerns that they are watching from their home or capturing, that they do make the calls to you. Because, again, I think there's sometimes a disconnect between when they should call, when they shouldn't call. I say call on everything and let the police decide what to do with it. So if you could just reiterate that to the public.
Couldn't agree with you more. I'd like to see 60,000 calls for service. They should be calling anytime they want.
Right, because the calls do get answered. Their concerns are heard, but sometimes it's tough for residents to get that. So thank you for the work that you've done over the past year. Again, I can't believe that it's been a year already. And it's impressive, the force that you've put together for us. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chief, I'll commend you on your leadership this past year and the efforts of your entire force. And what I found quite refreshing is just how candid you've been with where some of the successes are, but where some of the struggles lie too, in terms of the violent crime rate and the efforts that you look to address some of those issues. They're causing struggle for the city. So I appreciate your efforts there and how candid you are, and look forward to your continued leadership and service to the city. Councilors, at this time, I'd entertain a motion to accept 7216.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
We have a motion and second to accept 7216.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you, Chief Marno. Council as a whole committee meeting. April 12th, 2016, the following matters were taken up. 2016 ordinance, Chapter 181, Section 3561 of the Code of the City of Fitchburg, zoning special permit for non-conforming structures abandoned or not used for more than 2 years, is most recently amended, be further amended by striking the words City Council and by inserting the words Board of Appeals. And that was recommended that it be sent to its third and final readings. Councilor, if we were to accept this tonight, I'd ask for a separate motion that would both accept and send this to its third and final reading.
Also send 2016 to its third and final reading.
Second.
I have a motion and second to accept 2016 and send it to its third and final reading. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. It is unanimous. 2116 ordinance, the Chapter 181, Section 356 of the Code of the City of Fitchburg, zoning abandonment or non-use, is most recently amended, be further amended by adding this section shall not apply to the reuse of a lawfully existing non-conforming single or two-family structure where the principal use is permitted by right in the specified district under 181, 313, and provided that no modification of the use or structure is accomplished unless authorized under the provisions of 18135. That was recommended that it be given leave to withdraw.
Motion to give 2116 to withdraw.
Second.
I have a motion and second to give 2116 to accept the council's whole committee report to give 2116 leave to withdraw. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? One in opposition. Councilor Joseph. Legislative Affairs Committee report. Councilor Bean.
Mr. President, the Legislative Affairs Committee met tonight, and we acted on three petitions, two petitions and one ordinance. The first one was 30-2016, Vincent Pusatari, City Solicitor, to designate the position of Zoning Board of Appeals members as special municipal employee. That was voted granted unanimously. 31-2016, Vincent Pusatari, City Solicitor, to request that the City Council approve Fitchburg Police Department Chief Martineau's designation of the Deputy Chief of Police as a Solicitor's Assistant in accordance with Chapter 40, Section 27 of the Code of the City of Fitchburg. That was amended to delete the wording Deputy Chief of Police and put in designee of the Chief, and that was approved as amended. And the third one was an ordinance establishing a West Fitchburg Corridor Overlay District as outlined, and that was granted.
Motion to accept the Legislative Affairs Committee report.
Second.
I have a motion and second to accept the Legislative Affairs Committee report. Councilor Green speaking to the motion.
Because I missed that, can I just ask how the designation of Chief Martineau as the solicitor assistant, how does that work? Or what are you asking for him to do, I guess?
So when I took the position, I searched through the code to find the word solicitor, and I just tried to get an assessment as to what it is my duties and responsibilities were. And one of the benefits that the solicitor has is an opportunity to ask the chief to designate someone to investigate different cases that I might have to be working on. So I had actually recommended a specific individual. The chief replied and was concerned about whether or not, if I was in union negotiations, this particular individual might also be in union negotiations, and other management issues that he had in the department. And he identified that the best use would be to have I think it was his recommendation, the deputy chief to designate a detective on any given case that might come up. Obviously, I defer to his expertise and his recommendation to operate his department, and that was the cause of my petition to be drafted that way. I think the amendment that happened still achieves our purposes. I would just simply pick up the phone and ask the chief to help and assist and investigate a case. And my understanding is the way that we would operate is he would assign an available detective if there was a question to collect evidence or take other steps.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Boishman.
On the 31-2, the one that you were just talking to Councilor Green about. Now, that policeman that you're going to ask for, it's not going to be a full-time job, right? That he's going to be working for you?
No, this is a provision that's been in your city code. I understand it hasn't been implemented in quite some time, but this is something so that we have an understanding that's approved by this body, should you vote to approve it, that if a case or a circumstance comes up that requires some investigation, I have a resource available to me through the police department to do that. As a matter of fact, Chief's explanation to me to probably use one of the detectives if they're available is here we have people that are actually trained, they understand evidence, and they'll understand how to collect and evaluate evidence.
Okay. Now, can we go back to 30-2016? Could you explain that to me? The Zoning Board of Appeals member, special multiple membership here?
Yep.
Because you told me earlier, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, that we should keep it this way where if we have a special board member, we should be voting on it separate. Don't give it a blanket cause.
Okay, so this is a petition that I filed that asks for you to consider having your zoning board members special municipal employees. I think it's the right thing to do. I mean, I know that on our zoning board, we currently have a realtor, we currently have an attorney. I think our attorney actually works for the city in the capacity of the Public Housing Authority. So being a special municipal employee will specifically give those two folks an opportunity to be a little bit more flexible in the operation of their primary employment, whether it be as a realtor or as an attorney. And generally speaking, to the other members of the board, should they be active in their private business in the city, they're not necessarily conflicted out because they also serve on a zoning board of appeals. I think it's a good way to go. When we spoke about not doing a blanket vote, I think Councilor Bean had a suggestion, or at least an inquiry at the time, as to whether or not this is a type of petition that we should put together for all of our boards and commissions so that we just get to a point where they are all special municipal employees having the same benefits that the zoning board will hopefully have should you approve this petition. My thinking was, even after speaking with the Ethics Commission, is I kind of like the idea that we would look at each of the individual boards through individual petitions, because I think eventually it will allow us to have a better understanding as to exactly why we're approving each individual board. I think the planning board should be coming up shortly. we take a better look at it, and the law department will probably be filing a petition on that. Because you want to encourage your citizens to serve on these boards by giving them the flexibility to do what they're doing, but also, many of them are doing it anyways, and we ought to pull them into compliance with the use of designation of them as special municipal employees.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Joseph.
I guess my only concern about the way we're shotgunning it is if somebody right now has an interest on being on the Human Rights Commission or on the Parks Board or, another board that is really a quality person, are they holding back because they don't have you special municipal employee status, as opposed to if we had a blanket where boards and commissions were covered, would we be attracting people that right now are hesitant to come on because they're a conflict, some reason why they would think it would be a conflict for them if they did it, as opposed to if we just did a blanket thing and then still approve people coming on to the different boards and commissions.
I can't speak to how people are reacting. I do know when I spoke with the Ethics Commission, they held out a certain city that was doing it just that way, and they considered that the right way to do it, as far as getting to a point where everybody's approved. Certainly anyone could file a petition to make a list of all of the boards and commissions that we have and have them all go special municipal employees. I wouldn't oppose a petition like that. I think it's the kind of thing. I've been in the position now for about 3 months, and I'm just doing the ones that as they come up. The second part, your question in my mind is, well, as I work with the mayor's office as they vet their appointments, and you're receiving those letters here in City Council, when we see issues that come up during those, that's when we say, okay, let's get a petition on for that board. So that's how we've been operating. Either way is fine. If you want me to draft a full petition, or if Councilor Bean is interested in a full list of all the potential commissions and boards and get the rest of them done, I'm not aware of anybody that's declined service, but I guess it could be a deterrent.
Well said, Councilor.
Yes.
Councilor Green.
By bringing the special municipal employees into compliance, does that keep us out of there being a conflict of interest? If
Certainly going to protect the individual that you have serving you in that position.
Okay,
Yes.
and ultimately that would be a goal, right? That we want people that are like-minded, that have experience to apply for the boards and commissions, knowing that we as a city will keep them protected from conflict of interest.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor, I have a motion and second to accept the Legislative Affairs Committee oral report. Just a point of clarification of the councilor who made the motion and second. The ordinance, is that just simply to accept or to accept and send to its first reading?
Acceptance of the first reading.
Thank you. I have a motion and second to accept the Legislative Affairs Committee report. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Motion carries. Hearings. 6616. Mark Brito, Brito Oil Co., to be granted a license pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 148, for the storage of propane cylinders, total 80,000 gallons at 49 Cobbler Drive, 114 rear, Block 10, Lot 2A, as outlined in the enclosed petition. Declare the hearing open. I'd ask the person or persons representing this petition to please be seated at the center table. Sir, if you would kindly identify yourself by name and address.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Mark Brito. My home address is in Lancaster on Fire Road 3A. My business address is 49 Cobbler Drive in Fitchburg.
Thank you, and good evening.
Good evening.
Sir, this is an opportunity for you to kind of explain this petition, and and then certainly we'll allow councilors to address any questions they may have.
Been in business for 29 years. For the last 10 years, we moved to Fitchburg. We've been in Fitchburg on Cobbler Drive, which is an industrial zoned area. We're over by the airport and the waste or the transfer station. As a heating dealer, we see a future in propane. We feel there's a good need for that in the area now. It will enhance our business. Propane is used for a lot of different things now, whether it's hot water or your fireplace, your stoves, hot water, your dryer, pool heaters. People are using it for generators, and we feel there's a good need and a balance to our business as a heating oil dealer. We employ between 25 and 32 people, depending on the season. This should enhance and hopefully add to our employee list over time, hopefully quickly. It will certainly keep us in the area a long time if we put that type of investment on the land. And I welcome any questions you might have as we...
And sir, just wanted to clarify, you have all the necessary sign-offs from the fire department. They've inspected the area?
Not yet.
Okay.
Well, we have the initial sign-off. We are meeting the chief and lieutenant Thursday morning to go over safety issues. There's a fire safety analysis that has to be provided. The plans of the bulk plant itself have to be presented to the state, and the state has to approve them. We probably have a 60 to 90-day process of forms and et cetera to fill.
Once this permit is approved.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Councilor Bean?
Green or Bean?
Bean.
Bean, oh, thank you. Thank you. I just want to say that I've known the Brito family for a long time. Years ago, I worked for your dad. And I'm happy they did move to Fitchburg and down there on Cobbler Drive. And I think you're right. The market is changing. We saw that with some of like the Hafners and things like that. They were a big oil company. Now they're going to propane. And in order for you to stay in business, stay marketable, I think it's probably a good decision on your part. And I think that I'm here to support that to make sure we continue to keep you as a thriving business in Fitchburg.
Thank you.
Councilor Green.
Would these be, this is a brand-new venture for you, these 80,000 gallons, that would be digging underground, or would those be propane cylinders on top of the ground?
What we propose to have is two 30,000-gallon tanks that would be laying horizontal. Mm-hmm. They'd be about 60 feet long, maybe 8 feet in diameter. They'd be on two cement platforms cradled in. The 80,000 is to consider tanks or trucks, the vehicles, the bobtail trucks that we would have. They're like 3,000-gallon tanks. And then the cylinders themselves. So we'd be 60, 70, we'd be over 70,000 probably in a short time. So we'd have two big tanks. Then you'd have truck vehicles on the property.
Right.
And empty cylinders, which the fire department would be considering as full. So we need to take the proposal out for more than just the tanks themselves, the two big tanks.
Right. And what would be the public's safety concern with propane? I mean, it's a flammable gas, right? Propane is a flammable gas. And what would be the concern? Ignition, a crash from an airplane?
A crash from an airplane. We did discuss it with the Fitchburg Airport.
Okay.
They were okay with it. We still have a form to fill out, but the Fitchburg Airport basically, or the FAA basically said they were okay. We're not in a flight pattern. We're not overhead from one of the landing or takeoff areas. So we're like in between. These tanks wouldn't be that high off the ground. Our building is 23 feet tall, so these tanks would probably be 10, 12, maybe the most 14, 15 feet off the ground. So there was, a plane can hit it, yes. There are a lot of safety conditions put on storage, safety valves from putting the fuel into the tank and taking the fuel out. A lot of training, a lot of safety issues that we have to go through.
Okay.
So, I guess the hazard is there. But we have to do everything, deemed
Right, but you're
in the best
mitigating that,
interest to
right,
keep
okay.
to keep this under control.
All right, thank you.
Counselor Boishman.
Mark, those tanks are going to be fenced in, aren't they?
Yes, they will.
They will be fenced.
Yes.
So nobody can. How tall the fence is going to be? 8 feet.
I think it's 6 feet is the requirement,
All right.
and that will be fenced in directly around that area. We have half or 3/4 of the property is fenced, but we choose to fence and seal off that particular area.
Mr. Brito, can you talk about the expected, or the life expectancy of these tanks that you plan to install?
There are no other inspections that will be needed that I'm aware of. Although, as I say that, I mean, this is all new to me also, okay? We're all going through schooling right now. I know the bobtails have to have visuals and physical inspections like every 5 years.
Okay.
My understanding is the life of them are probably 60, 70 years, these tanks. They're at least 3/4 of an inch thick of steel. I think one tank weighs like 80,000 pounds. So, yes, they're under pressure, but all the safeguards are there.
And my only concern, the reason I ask that is, throughout our city's history, we've had, any number of different industrial sectors, and, frequently they either move on or, as business needs change, contaminants or hazards are just kind of, left, and it's up to the city to deal with. And, 50, 100 years down the road, then we have to deal with, contamination and mitigation efforts. So certainly, good to hear that the shelf life and expectancy is that long. And then certainly I know there's, nothing we could talk about today of, remediation 50 or 100 years from now, but certainly, I would understand that the state should probably have some expectations on how these are handled with storage beyond their reasonable shelf life. So I echo those sentiments that I'm happy that you've continued to do business in Fitchburg. Looking forward to your continued investment in another sector of this industry, and your record here is good, and look forward to those continued investments. Thank you. Councilors, any other questions?
One more final question.
Councilor Boishman.
Mark, if this council puts this on hold until you get the reports from the fire department, will you be upset?
No, I don't foresee any problem.
Councilor Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's in the correct zoning. It's here for safety issues, but we have department heads that make those determinations. Just because we grant permission doesn't mean he can do it. It means that the council granted permission. He still has to pass all the safety precautions of the city and the state. So I don't see any point in holding up any kind of approval. It's not going to get approved unless the fire department and everybody else that's involved has to do it. So it doesn't make the city safer. It doesn't make the neighborhood safer. It doesn't make the airport safer by holding it up.
Unless there's any other further questions from councilors, I'd ask that anyone, if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the petition. Sir, if you could please come forward.
My name's Scott Ellis. I'm the airport manager. I'm not here to speak in favor or against it. I just wanted to clarify some of the questions. When this proposal was brought to me, because his property does abut the airport, I contacted the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Aeronautics Division and the FAA. Neither of them have any objections to that. I instructed Mr. Brito to fill out an FAA Form 7460, which is proposed construction near an airport. And as long as the FAA signs off on that, then the airport has no objection to these tanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Well, you're here. Does any councilors have any questions or concerns for Mr. Ellis? No. Okay. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? If all have been heard, I declare the hearing closed. The matter is now before the council.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve 6616. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. It is unanimous. $67.16, Comcast of Massachusetts 3, Inc., to request a hearing with the Fitchburg City Council for a grant of location. The purpose of the grant of location request is to install a new conduit system to provide service to 881 Main Street as outlined in the enclosed petition. Declare the hearing open. The persons or person representing the petition here this evening. Good evening. If you could please approach the center table, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Dave Fawalling, Comcast. I live in Burlington, Mass.
Good evening. I'm Miguel Quintel, project coordinator with Comcast, and I live in Lunenburg.
Thank you. If you gentlemen could kindly explain this project and the petition.
Sure. We have a request to bring service into the federal building, so we're planning to go off the pole number 1 off of Academy Street and cross Academy Street right into the federal building. The service is for I'm a little nervous.
Take your time.
The service is for one of the tenants in at 881 Main Street.
Just to inquire, do you expect to dig up any pavement, any concrete, poured sidewalks? If so, how would you mitigate any digging or excavation that's done to the existing infrastructure?
We would we hire a contractor to do the work for us. They go through the dig safe procedures, and we go 24 inches deep, and then we take care of all the patching and any sidewalk that we dig up.
So if we had a couple of squares of concrete sidewalk taken up, would we expect that would be poured and it would match the existing sidewalk as it is now?
That is correct, according to the permit from the city.
Okay.
It'll be restored to the condition, if not better than it is today, basically.
Now, I know the current street condition, currently in pretty good shape. You'll be digging that up. Is this just a simple patch? I guess how much ground are you digging up in the road? And then in terms of pavement, is it just a simple trench patch, or will you just be paving a certain section of the street?
I think the plan calls for roughly 40 feet or so from the utility pole to the property line.
Okay.
And the trench will be restored to the conditions of the DPW permit once it's issued. Whatever requirements are part of that permit, we will restore it to that condition.
Am I correct that once you then work with the city engineer to make sure it's met their satisfaction before the project is completed?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Thank you, gentlemen. Councilor Green?
What tenant specifically is requesting the service?
It is the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay, thank you. Not touching that one anymore.
Mr. Solicitor?
Our city ordinance does require you're going to install a separate conduit for city purposes?
That is correct.
And have you been doing that historically?
Yes, I have.
You have been?
Yes. Every petition that we've put in, it's always 2 conduits.
Okay. How far down Main Street does the conduit go?
I'm sorry?
How far down Main Street does that conduit go?
It goes, we have several locations. Which one are you referring to?
Well, we're talking about, was it 1?
881.
Is it 881?
Yep.
So at 881, how far down Main Street do we have Comcast high-speed internet service?
This one doesn't go to Main Street. We're taking off from pole number 1 on Academy Street.
So is there no high-speed internet service on that Main Street? We're feeding Main Street from the Boulder Drive or from Academy?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And are you aware of portions of Main Street that are not serviced by Comcast high-speed internet
Yes.
service? And do you know those areas for us?
Those areas, I know that our government relations were speaking to the city council
For many
in
years.
regards to that. I can't speak to that.
For a long
because-
period of time. But
Right.
are you familiar, so that these folks would know the extent of the area that's not being serviced by Comcast?
Yes. I am
Are you
familiar
aware of
with
the areas?
Yes.
And what are they?
I know we start at the bank, Santander Bank, that side, and the new pub that's going in place there, which used to be Hong Kong Cafe. That whole area all the way up to the corner of 470 Main Street. That area there, the left side of Main Street does not have Comcast.
Is it as difficult to pull from where you're going to service the Homeland Security tenant as it would be our other occupants on Main Street?
Yes, it's much difficult.
Okay. And is it because there's nowhere near that area of Main Street?
Yeah, that's the whole issue right there. Yeah.
So
Unfortunately.
as a result of this particular project, Comcast is going to pick up an additional customer, one additional customer.
No, just any customer in that building, 881 Federal Main
The
Street.
federal building there.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's only been one request for customer service at this point in time.
At this time there was, but I have completed 3 other surveys throughout the time, so I'm certain that there will be other folks that will be interested once we're in there.
And are those tenants being charged for service to bring the utility into the building?
No.
Okay.
Council Green.
Am I to understand that if we have internet high-speed access at 881 Main Street, that there's no way for the people across the common to pick up on that signal, or further down on Main Street to pick up on that signal?
Not unless they have the federal building sets up a Wi-Fi for the folks across the street, which only goes a certain distance. And they would have to have their password.
All right, thank you.
Gentlemen, I certainly, am in favor of providing access to 881 Main Street, but I do have a general concern of, for 10 years now, Massachusetts has been pushing a fast and affordable broadband access to all Massachusetts residents, and that was something that was agreed to, by the various legislative bodies and executive bodies of the state, and it's not something we've seen really trickle out far beyond 495. And I just find it's frequently convenient that it's never affordable or easy for the installation to be done. We have large swaths of our city where utilities have, for lack of a better phrase, refused to install or work with customers in our industrial and our residential sectors of the city to provide broadband access. We talk about partnering with organizations and partnering with businesses. And certainly you do plenty of work in the city, but I'm just disappointed when I hear that, large areas of our Main Street, what should be our, one of our hubs, are held up by lack of affordable or lack of just access at all to internet. I know Airport Road continues to be an issue really holding up our development of our city. We're here to partner here, but I've yet to hear that we've had meaningful engagement from Comcast and others. So I guess as you come before us, please keep that in mind that, we've been kind of anxious to hear what plans there are from Comcast moving forward. Again, I have no opposition to preventing 881, but I certainly, have my concerns moving forward with how many more we're going to grant until some of our city's concerns are met with regards to our current and future businesses as well as residents.
Mr. President.
Mr. Solicitor.
There has been no serious offer from Comcast in connection with what Comcast is willing to do and what the city is being asked for to provide as far as infrastructure upgrade, and what potential Comcast customers on either Airport Road or on our Main Street would come up with. And, my recommendation would be that we would get that before we continue to supply relief to Comcast. I mean, just at least an offer, something that's concrete that we could evaluate and assess and determine whether we could afford it or not. something we could bring to the citizens the businesses that are operating on Airport Road or on Main Street, and at least solicit our citizens and say, this is what Comcast is looking for. I mean, can we get an offer?
I would have to, that's something that I would have to speak to our government relations folks, and they would have to make that decision. That's.
We would like to get an offer.
Well, if you could please relay those concerns to your governmental relations team, I'd appreciate that. Councilor Di Natale.
Would you gentlemen know what would trigger this process from going forward? To give access to Airport Road and Main Street? I would have to, you're a private business. The city shouldn't be in the business of dictating to you what to do. With that said, I would be curious to know what would trigger Comcast to say, you know what, we better give coverage to Main Street. Because it's going to be a cost to you guys. I just love it when government's telling private businesses what we need. What about for the private business? I'd like to know what would trigger that. You guys aren't the ones to talk to about that. You have no control over this. There is what spearheaded this 881 installment?
The customer at 881.
Customer contacted Comcast and said,
correct.
we want this service.
The Homeland Department of Security.
And they'll be paying for that service.
That is correct.
They're not going to be paying to bring the line. Excuse me, Mr. Diaz. Comcast is paying for that.
I understand Comcast is paying for the line. There's a give and take. Comcast isn't going to do something that's going to make them lose money. So, I mean, I guess I'm not saying I'm on your side. I'm just saying there are market forces that determine the coverage. There's not a market, it doesn't get done. We shouldn't be strong-arming you guys to do something if there is a legitimate reason why the market doesn't dictate it. I'd like it if there was, but I'm not going to sit here, pound my fist on the table and say, you better put the coverage in or else we're not going to give any more installations. This is being requested the customer is requesting this. Okay? I don't like to insert myself into this process. I'm not going to hold this up unless we get an agreement. My point is, there's got to be an overarching reason why it hasn't happened yet. I'd like to hear from Comcast why it hasn't happened yet. And if you could relay this message back to government relations, we would appreciate it. But you don't have any say in this, and I don't think this is the appropriate venue to raise this issue. I can't speak for Comcast why they don't do this. But, when I hear that the state of Massachusetts is telling them what they should do or giving them guidance, that really makes me cringe. Because government isn't in the business of knowing what private companies do. Because government can't run their own operations, let alone private companies. Thank you.
Councilor Caddy?
I didn't have my hand up,
Okay.
but I will ask a question.
Okay.
You said earlier that there was a bar going in with the old Chinese place. Was he having a problem getting Comcast into his building?
Yes.
Did he get it?
No.
Where's
That went to government relations.
where's the closest?
We're looking at that.
Where's the closest?
The corner of,
I thought it was across the street from what I heard.
no, it's not across the street. It's the last petition that we put in, which was to bring service to 470 Main Street, the bowling alley. It's right there on the corner of Boulder and Putnam.
470 is a very large apartment. Is that what you was told?
Yep, that's the CDC building.
So it actually is.
It's the building right on the corner of Main and Putnam. The gentleman is doing some remodeling.
Well, it's actually two buildings back. It's almost to the corner of Pritchard Street, 470 Main Street.
It's that entire building that he owns all the way up to the bowling alley there.
You would know more about this than me, but wouldn't any business that wanted to go on Main Street, wouldn't this be a benefit to them to have this high-speed access?
In my opinion, yes.
Couldn't that be hurting us by not having that? We're trying to get people on Main Street, and if we don't have that and someone else does, wouldn't they go to the other city rather than come to our city? I mean, everybody today is using internet access, and to think that we're trying to trying to bring economy back to the city. And that's why I think everyone's talking about this, because it's really hurting us. I heard about the Beamers trying to get internet there, and I thought it was resolved. This is the first I heard that it wasn't. Just saying, I know it's not your, but I think it's hurting our city greatly. At some point, it just seems it would be best to just to do it right up Main Street. And I think you'd get a lot more customers. I think you'd be helping the city. Thank you.
Councilor Green.
If we denied this request, where would that leave you?
I would just bring it to government relations. And I would have to tell this customer that they can't get our service.
Do you suppose that there would be a competitor that might pick up the federal building and be able to offer that same service?
I wouldn't be able to answer that question. I wouldn't know.
I mean, I do find it ironic that this board has been talking about high-speed internet for the past 10 or 12 years that a lot of the veteran counselors have sat on. But I guess my concern is if we don't play hardball, how are we ever going to get what we want without, this for that? And again, I'm sorry that you have to be the ones to maybe hear this or experience this, but when does the city get what it wants, which is Wi-Fi spots and high-speed internet on Main Street? Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Does it cost the Comcast to do all that installation and provide services that are not market-driven? That's why they don't do it. There's not a market for the services down there. Now, we're in a catch-22. If you build it, they will come. But from their standpoint, there's nothing there, so they're not going to do it. So we're between a rock and a hard place. I think we need to move on this hearing for this particular customer. And, I've been on here for over 8 years now. I have never seen government relations from Comcast here. It's not their fault. Correct me if I'm wrong. We've never pushed to have them come here. So we should send a letter to government relations at Comcast for them to come here. We'll have a hearing and a meeting and discuss with them and find out from them why they don't do it. Some are indicating that they should just do it. Sure, easy for us to say. What's their reason for not doing it? I would venture to guess Comcast isn't sitting there going, you know what, we want the city of Fitchburg not to like us. So I am not going to hold this hostage for the Department of Homeland Security because of something you gentlemen can't control, and this is a long-standing issue. Let's get them before us in a separate hearing and be done with it. Thank you.
Councilor Bean.
It is kind of driven by the customer in that, but I think the point is that here in the city, we're trying to promote parts of our downtown and other parts of the city, and without high-speed internet, it's very difficult to do business today in the 21st century. So, you go to other cities and they have it. It's just very frustrating here in Fitchburg that we have parts of our areas that we want to develop. We don't have that type of service that businesses need in order to operate and survive. I would suggest maybe that we do invite the government relations people in, and also have Mary Jo Bohart in that meeting also to kind of work something out, and the mayor. If we're going to grow as a city, we need to have the services that these companies need in order to be successful.
Councilor Joseph.
I'm sure as part of the agreement when Comcast came into the town that they agreed to put service on Main Street, because I'm sure there was a negotiations committee. City puts together a negotiations committee along with Comcast. So is there an agreement with Comcast to have services on Main Street already?
Again, the agreements are drafted by government relations and the city.
So there's already an agreement in place that you will provide services on Main Street, correct?
Well, there's the franchise agreement, so I don't know. We don't really typically have access to that franchise agreement, but that's typically something that the government relations person would work on with the city. So I'm sure that there's probably a copy on file at City Hall with that franchise agreement, that, you know, you might want to, I guess, take a look at that and then have that conversation with our government relations person.
I think the attorney is saying that already exists, correct?
There's an agreement. I don't think it's an agreement to provide services. Comcast, what they do is they look at what they consider to be an R value, and if an area has an R value, it exceeds 5, which is a return on their investment that'll take more than 5 years. That's an area that they're not willing to develop. But what they will do is they will partner with cities or towns and customers, potential customers, to come up with a sharing of the costs. I would expect to be that exceed their R level, our R5 level, which is exactly what we're asking Comcast to come up with. Can we quantify a number? Can you make an offer to us so that we have a dollar amount that we can say, okay, here's our goal. We need to set this much money aside as a city. And the government building's been there for an awful long time. It hasn't had high-speed internet service. So, I mean, maybe we can get an offer. That's all I think that this board should be looking for, an offer. And I think it would be a great message to send to Comcast. And I think there's been a history of Comcast being under a city ordinance to install a conduit that would mirror any conduit that they've installed. And what I've been told by the IT department is that hasn't been happening. And I also understand that there's been a constant disagreement with our IT department and Comcast and Verizon, not just you guys, regarding the engineering of where the service exists and where the service doesn't exist. So these are very simple. These are facts that are capable of being known. And unfortunately, we're still, I guess, after years and years of discussing these things, we still don't know.
Councilor Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. For gentlemen and women that come before the council, it turns into a torture chamber because they don't have any control of what the higher-ups do. The same thing for Unitil or Verizon. When they come in individually, they're asking for one specific item, and the council gets the opportunity to quiz them, and they don't have the answers. Don't we have a department head that's in charge of technology today? Wouldn't it be his or her responsibility to be following up some of the requests that are here? Not the council's job to be asking them to answer questions that they can't answer. And there's questions that we don't even know how to ask, at least me. What we need, what we should have, how fast it should be. But I think it should be a department head, or there used to be a committee that started out in the planning office years ago. But I think those are the people that should be pushing the issue and informing the mayor and the city council of where they are, where we're trying to get, and what we're going to do about it. But I don't believe these gentlemen are prepared for it. I don't think it's their job. They came in with one request. I think that's what the council should address.
Councilor Green.
How much is this project costing Comcast to do, to dig and pull the line?
I'm not sure what Comcast absorbed and what the customer paid, or for the customer paid, or basically if it's approved, I'm the coordinator. I do all the paperwork and get to hire the contractors to complete the project.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Can we please send a letter to government relations asking them to come before us? No one has answered my question. When is the last time Comcast government relations has been before us? If they were here for the previous administration and the administration before that and that, wonderful. I have no knowledge of those meetings. No one in this room does. So I don't know what the previous administration did. I don't know what the IT department's doing. In order for us to I'd like this to be a public meeting, to hear from the horse's mouth why they choose not to invest in the downtown area, and I can guarantee you it's not because they don't feel like it. All right? There is an overriding reason. Yes, in this day and age, companies are in the business to make profit. It's radical for some people to grasp because profit's such a dirty word, but that's what they're there to do. So there's got to be reasons for it. I suggest we not hold this hostage, bring them before us in the letter stating, maybe if you want, We would appreciate you working with us before we get any more of these requests that will impact customers. Again, 9 years, never have I seen them here. So any talk of what they've been discussing with the city hasn't been relayed to us. All we're doing is speculating and asking two gentlemen who have no clue what government relations does or why they do it to ask the questions. Can we please move forward here? We're wasting our time asking these two questions about that kind of issue. They only know about 881 Main Street and the reason why it's going in, period. I'd like to see that in writing, sent to Comcast tomorrow, and then we can sit back at the next hearing and say, they ignored us, and we should be upset about that. Until I see that letter sent to them, I will not hold anything hostage. For all I know, the Government Relations Board at Comcast thinks everything's wonderful. I don't know.
Counselor,
I'm not putting my faith in the IT department or in past negotiations with the city because I don't know anything about it. I want to hear from the horse's mouth. Let's get them before us.
That request will be communicated via the mayor to Comcast and Governmental Relations.
Thank you.
Counselor Boschman.
No, Councilor D'Antiali, we have something here that they need is our permission. And I look around at different other utilities, not just Comcast, Verizon, and they're very hard to do business with. If you look at your telephone poles, when you ask them to move them, take the wires off them and put them on the other pole so you can get the old pole out, they won't do it. So now we got to pass legislation to have them do that. We have a card, and I agree with the city solicitor. If you want the governing board, I'll tell you this right now. We'll hold it. Tell the board to come down and talk to us. And when they come down and sit with us and talk to us, we'll pass this. We have a card here that they want, because they're going to make money on that card. So why give it to them when we can get the board here, because we're holding the card right here. We got the ace right here, holding that ace. Why? Why give it to them and say, the governing board won't give it to them if they come here or not. After they get what they want, they have nobody to answer to after that. That's how I feel. I agree with the city solicitor. We get something here, we should hold it.
Counselor Tran.
We don't have a card. We have an issue with Comcast getting service on Main Street. That's a different issue. It should be discussed in a different forum. 881 is in front of us. This is not a card. If we hold it hostage, who's going to benefit from it? No one. Who's going to be hurt from it? The petitioner at 881 Main Street. Common sense. I'm not going to hold that. Thank you.
Counselor Donnelly.
I just agree with what Councilor Tran said. There's one issue on the table. Over the years, I've listened to the Unitil and Verizon. It's not correct. It's not appropriate. It's not even good business to hold up. Somebody petitioned 881. They must be taxpayers. If they're not the somebody at 881 is paying taxes. It's a taxpayer that came in with a request. We should address one issue. If there's another issue that should be put on the table, this is not the time to do it. They can't answer the questions. It's not their job to answer the questions. Thank you.
Are there any counselors wishing to speak at this time? Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? If all have been heard, I declare the hearing closed. Matter is now before the council.
Motion to grant 67-16.
Second.
I have a motion and second to grant 6716. Speaking to the motion, Councilor Bean.
I'm not sure if it's appropriate now, but if we could amend the motion to include a letter to the mayor and to the to ask or whoever to ask that the appropriate people come before the commission, or is that a separate item I had to take up?
Councilor, we've already made note.
Okay, so we don't have to do. Okay. Yeah. I just want to make sure that happens. I think Councilor Boschman has a point, but I just want to make sure that I don't want to hold up that permit here, but I do want to make send a message.
Absolutely, that communication will be issued.
Okay.
I have a motion and second at this time. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 2 in opposition. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Back to the agenda. Orders, Finance.
Sent to finance.
Second.
I have a motion and second to send 73 up to and including 7616 to Finance. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Order, Other, 7716, order effective immediately. The polls shall be open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. at all municipal elections and preliminaries. Reference petition 23115.
Move the order be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion second.
Oh,
Oh, Councilors, I would need a suspension of the
Move
rules.
suspension of rules.
second.
I have a motion and second to suspend the rules on 7716. All those in favor of suspension? All those opposed? Rules are suspended. Item is before you.
Move the order be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion and second to adopt 7716. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The order is adopted. Ordinance 6416, an ordinance amending Chapter 177, Article 6, Section 177-15, subsection C of the City Code of the City of Fitchburg, reference water rates as outlined in the enclosed ordinance, reference petition 2816, final reading.
Motion to send 6416 to its final reading.
Second.
I have a motion to send 6416 to its final reading. Enrolled, ordained, and advertised. Did I get that correct?
You did.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Petitions.
Motion to send 7816 up to and 8116 to their respective committees.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and second to send 78 up to and including 8116 to their respective committees. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
I have an announcement. Councilor Joseph.
Just one note, if 7816 could also be sent to the mayor's office, because I don't think we have any ability to invest in a business incubator, but he does. So I just think that if it just send it to the Economic Development Committee, it won't go very far.
Absolutely. We can also make the mayor aware of that petition. I have a motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned.